Hi folks, John Cordisco back again with another great chess video for you. This is Game 6 of the World Chess Championship 2013, brought to you from Chennai, India. Current world champion Championship-Anand against the challenger from Norway, Magnus Carlsen, 22 years old, rated #1 in the world. It's a long game, so I'm going to get right to it. It's going to be a real low-pay Berlin, but it's going to be another extraordinary game, so don't roll your eyes at the boring Berlin. Anand has white, Carlsen has black. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. We've all seen this, of course, many times. Bishop C5, C3, castle, castle. I'm going to breeze through the opening here quickly because there's a lot of ground to cover, and we've all seen this opening a million times. A6, bishop, B3, D6, bishop G5, bishop to E6. Frankly, I think the alternative would H6 would be better, something that I would do. But he's just going to retreat the bishop and ends up being kind of the same. After bishop to E6, knight B to D2. I think D4 as a break is something to look at. Bishop takes, A takes, bishop B6 is an interesting scenario. After knight B to D2, H6 kicking the bishop, bishop to H4, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight to B8. Now this is quite a long game. It's 60 odd moves, so I'm going through this part a little bit quick. Of course, you can always pause the video and look at it yourself anytime. H3. I think he really wants to cover this square, Anand. Develop the knight. Knight to H2. That was an interesting move. I have my Fritz 13 computer on off screen, and I kind of use it as a guide to get an idea where the white or black stands. B4 and queen to C2 were the first two choices. I probably would have went B4 myself. Knight to H2 is an interesting idea. Of course, he wants to bring the knight here, take away one of black's defenders. Queen E7. Now knight there, he reroutes the other knight. Bishop B6. Looks like it's going to be a full-out kingside attack on black here. But Magnus has his really strong dart-squared bishop here, and both his knights are in play for defense. I think black should be okay, but the attack's coming. Knight to E3. Queen E6. Now comes B4. Take that square away from the bishop. And also, queen was attacking B3. A5. B takes. Bishop takes. Now comes the knight. Bishop B6. This one I was surprised about. I'm surprised he took. Bishop takes, knight takes. To me, that's a little too passive. Exchanging pieces. Now white's attack on the king side is basically fizzled. Knight takes, queen takes. Oddly enough, the computer scores this exactly 0.00. Queen to G4. If he had gone queen to E2, bishop takes, queen to E6, and you get your double rook queen endings. Queen to G4, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen to E7, rook to F1, put it on the open file, C5, king to H2, C4 for Magnus, D4. Now rook takes, rook takes. White has the file. It's the only open file on the board, and white now controls it. I like white in this position. The computer shows a tiny advantage for black, but I think white's much easier to play. Queen to B7, rook to D1, queen to C6. Like I said, I'm going a little fast. There's a lot of ground to cover. Now we're going to see some extraordinary maneuvering now. It's classic Carlsen. Take an even game or a tiny advantage and grind it down into something that you can win. To grind down the other person, to continue on. Queen F5 for Vichy. Magnus takes, Rook takes. Rook to E5, Queen F3, Queen to C7. We're going to see a lot of maneuvering now. They're getting closer to time control. This is move 33. Queen to G4. You'll see the king move again. Queen back. G6, King H2. I think at this point it's dead drawn, even though it shows about a half a point advantage for black. I don't think there's any way for black to crash through. King to G7, Queen to F3, and here we go. Looked like it was going to be a draw. Magnus plays on. Doesn't want to draw. Queen to G3. Now the computer is showing that it's ganging up on the D6 pawn, which is kind of funny. Rook takes, Queen takes, Rook takes, Queen takes, Rook takes. Black's up a pawn now. I think what Vichy's thinking is, when all these pawns on this side of the board are traded off, it'll leave a 3-on-2, which we all know is a dead draw. I think that was his idea. Rook to D5, Rook to B7. Makes that rook kind of passive, but Magnus wants to play on. Rook to D6, F6. Going to be a lot of maneuvering now. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. H4, King F7, H5. That was a move that nobody saw coming. Vichy had an idea. Isolate those pawns and then later pick up one or two of those to draw. I think that was his thought. The king suggests King to G3. I think bringing the king into the game might be worth something because that rook on B7 is tied down to the defense of the B pawn. H5. He took. Rook to D5, attacking the isolated pawn. King protects. King G3. Now he's going to bring the king up. That's his idea. To bring the king here and go after this pawn, or if he pushes this pawn up, come back here and check. That was the idea. It looks like a good one. Rook to B6. Now the rook wants to get in. It's a passive rook. He wants to be active. Rook to C5, F5, King to H4, Rook to E6. Now comes black's rook. Here we go. Rook takes, Rook to E4 check. King has to back up. King to G5. Now the black king's getting pushed back. Vichy's got these two passed pawns now in the end. We'll see if it's going to be any good. Rook to B8. H4. Rook checks. King to H5. Cutting off the rook. Rook to F8. Rook to F4. Rook to C8. Rook to G4. Now it comes. Rook to F8. G3 check. King to H2. Now King to G5. Now the king can come back over. Can come over here. Rook to G8 check. King to F4. Of course, taking it, of course, you're doomed. Because if you take, pawn takes check. These pawns are coming down. Black is doomed. Or excuse me, white is doomed. Rook to C8. King to E3. Rook to C4. Or excuse me, takes C4. Now Vichy has two passed pawns, B and C. But I think what's happening now is his B and C pawns are in the way of his rook. It's funny how sometimes your advantage is in your way. And in this case, those pawns are directly in his way. If these pawns were farther down, say here and here, white could very well win this. At least draw it. F4. And this is where Vichy stumbles. Pawn to b4, draws. He goes rook to a4. Big mistake. You see this so often, even at the world elite level like these guys. That was move 60 for white, the second time control. You see that all the time on move 40, the first time control, is where usually a player makes a mistake. Vishy's probably tired. They've been playing a long time. 60th move. He just miscalculated. It's one of the ironies of chess that the less amount of pieces there are on the board, the more complex it is. And rook-pawn endings are crazy. They're complicated. He should have went b4. Instead he went rook to a4. Magnus goes h3. The idea already is to make this pawn move so this pawn can advance. G takes, rook to g6, c4. Now right now the score for black before c4 is minus almost 2.5 points. Now it's 4 points. Goes back and forth for black. White is lost right now. Absolutely lost. If he went rook to a8 instead, really wouldn't change much to harass the king. After c4, f3. What is Vishy to do now? It's lost, and I think he knows it. But his will to play on continues. Rook checks, king to e2, b4. Now the pawns are out of the way, but now it's too late. This pawn is so far down, and now if you notice, this rook is cutting off the white king. f2. Incredible. Rook to a2 check, king to f3, rook checks, king to f4. Get out of the checks. What to do, what to do. He went rook to a8 and rook to g1, and that's where Championship-Anand, world champion, resigned. Second game in a row that he lost. And at the press conference after, he was absolutely heartbroken and very upset, I might add as well. Well, after rook to g1, rook to f8 check, king to e3 in case you want to see it played out. Rook checks, king to d4. Now those pawns are doomed. Check, king takes, and you get the idea. The next move, when black gets a chance, is queen. I felt bad for Vishy, but this is typical Carlsen. And I don't mean typical in a bad way. This is typical Carlsen, where he will play it down and play it down and play it down to take a minute advantage and try to cash in on it. He said in the press conference, and I believe him, because he does it in his regular tournament games. He said, we're playing for the World Championship. You should expect to play down to the end. Anyway, folks, that's today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I want you all to remember that if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And I hope to see all of you in my next video. And I want to thank my many new subscribers. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank some of the videos I've received several thousand views on. That's very encouraging. I appreciate it. Kind of gives me an incentive to keep doing them some more. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.